Hey, this is Gary King here at Left Foray Studio. This is not a 2020 podcast type video talking about the nonsense and anything like that. I wanted to do a sort of talk about my time with Jeff Beck. And I've been thinking about it for quite some time now. And I know I did a version of it with Sarah when we were talking about my musical background and experiences and so on. But I just wanted to go over it again. And the main point is to emphasize about teamwork, because of course without teamwork we can't do any of these things. And I think over the last few years, especially the last perhaps 10 years since the introduction of social anti-social media, everything's become about the individual as opposed to the team. And I always look at everything as like, if you wanted to open a restaurant, you don't have to be a chef to open a restaurant, but if you haven't got a great chef, you're going to have a pretty crappy restaurant, right? So that's kind of how I look at things. So anyway, I'm going to do 3 of these. One's about Jeff, the other one's about my lovely mate Mr. Joe Lynn Turner and his complete transition, his new image, his album Belly of the Beast and what it's all about. There's some real key points in that. And then I'm going to talk about going to Nashville when I went to Nashville in the 90s with my friend Paul Bishop, and how that all happened, and how there has to be somebody that instigates something before it can happen. And I constantly see arguments on this platform, people constantly criticising each other and calling each other names and so on, which is really non-productive. And I personally don't work with anybody like that. You can criticise me as much as you like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. All I know is that I'm doing and I've done some things, but the things I've been able to do would not have been possible if it wasn't for other people. So I think credit where it's due. Credit is important. And a lot of people, again, they seem to be missing that. It's all about them, and it actually isn't. It's about a team. So anyway, so here we go. So I had an opportunity to go and play with the wonderful guitar legend Jeff Beck. Now, I know through the last few years especially how corrupt the music industry is. I know that the protagonists, the main faces, you know, these people are not, they're very talented maybe in a lot of cases, but they're also chosen. They all have family backgrounds. There's no rags to riches. That's all a load of old rubbish. There's no rags to riches, overnight success. So various people from various bands, normally the singer is part of a certain family or belongs to some political group and so on. Jeff, I don't know what his background was. I know a little bit about it, but we won't go into that. What we want to talk about is the wonderful experience of being in the studio with Jeff, and what a really nice guy he was as well. So about 1997, so there you go. A friend of mine who ran a studio above a hairdresser's, a hair salon, where we'd done a lot of work over the years, called me up one day and said to me, "Hey, you never guess who I've got in the studio?" And I have no idea. So he said, "I'll give you a clue, a guitar legend, British guitar great." And the only person I could think of at the time was Pete Townsend. I don't know why I thought of Pete Townsend. He said to me, "Well, come up, just come up and stick your head in." So I went up to the studio, very small studio, and as soon as I walked in the door, I recognised this guitar, because I'd just seen, I think it was Blaze of Glory, John Bon Jovi, Blaze of Glory, and I think it was on that record that Jeff played the solo. I'll have to re-look, but anyway, I'd seen it on TV, and I was like, "Jeff Beck," and he goes, "Yeah, I got Jeff Beck's Big Town Playboys. They're here recording." I was like, "No way." He's like, "Yeah." So I was sort of hanging out a little bit, and I thought, well, I should really go. And I've never been one of these sort of starstruck people, thank goodness. I just view people as talented, and that's it. You know, it's just a person who's very talented. So Jeff turns up with these guys, and as everybody, especially the guitar fraternity knows, of course, Jeff is Nigel Tufnell from Spinal Tap, or Jeff was Nigel. Nigel was Jeff, same hair and everything. And these guys turn up, and I said hello and I left. So I said to my friend Clive, you've got to get him something from me, some tracks, some drums, whatever, And Clive was like, well, Clive is actually going out to his studio. They were building a studio in the roof of his house in East Sussex. Clive said, well, yeah, I don't know whether I can really do that. So I pestered this poor man for a year. Come on, you got it, this be great, I can do the job and everything. So eventually he must have done something, because about a year later, I get a phone call and Clive said to me, come on then, he wants you to go out. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, get your drums in your van. We're going out there on Thursday or whatever it was. So I had a van, a short wheelbase Ford Transit van that sadly looked a bit like the 18 van. So it was black with a red and green stripe up the side. And I loaded my gear in there, and I had this Remo custom kit, kind of like Terry Bozzio type of thing, all square sizes. Anybody that doesn't know that means 10 by 10, 12 by 12, 14 by, and so on. I loaded up my van and picked Clive up, and we drove out to Jeff's. And I'll slot some pictures in along the way so you can see. I haven't got very many because, again, I wasn't going to take lots of pictures, and I didn't take any pictures with Jeff. I didn't want to go, Jeff, can we do a picture for my Sphinctogram page? Because it didn't exist, right? So Clive said to me, he goes, well, he's either going to like you or not. If he doesn't like you, you won't be coming back. So I said, fine. So when I went into what was going to be Jeff's studio, because it was really only just being put together at the time, there was this big black Yamaha, I think it was like Tour Custom or 9000 Yamaha 9000 kit, which belonged to the late great Cozy Powell. With huge, I think 26-inch kick drums or whatever they were, 24-inch kick drums. And I'm only little, so there was like no way I was going to play that. So we took that lot down, we put up my kit, we had some D-drum triggers on there, and Jeff comes up the stairs in the morning with a tray of tea, biscuits and cake. And we got chatting, and what the idea was that I was going to play along to some CDs that I liked and create some drum tracks for Jeff to jam to. You got to remember, although I'd been in lots of band situations, that I'd never done anything like this with somebody of that profile, knowing that Stuart Copeland had been there, and actually they recorded at Parkgate Studio, which is now, of course, like a lot of the big studios, gone. Manu Cachet, lots of guys, So here I am, little Gary, And anyway, Jeff comes up, we get chatting, he goes, hey, I got some ideas, I've got this one track, and I did this with Stuart. And he said, I had to go out, he said, because in the end, I was so fed up with listening to him trying to work on different cowbell sounds and stuff like that. And this is the honest truth. I'm not making this up, right? So I went out and let him get on with it. But I got this track, and this would be really cool for you to overdub some stuff over. So I was like, all right then. And what he wanted to do was have like a kind of tribal beat, like and over, right? So I said, okay. So basically I recorded that pattern, I think it was about 15, 20 times, one on top of another. And then back then we were using ADAT to record, right? And he had a little Mackie desk and ADAT. So we were just literally bouncing one session to another, and it created this immense sound, and I'd never really done anything like that. But at the end of it, where I'd been following myself around the drums, and I had a double kick drum kit and all that rubbish then, so I had a 10, 12, 13 and 16 toms, so I'm going around that. I almost felt like I was hungover and pissed by the time I'd finished, because I'd done it so many times. 4.5 minutes, then another 4.5 minutes, and so on. But anyway, we did all that, and then I left. And then the next day I went back again, and he started showing me, he kind of like opened up a little bit, which was great. And he was a really nice guy too. And he said, he took me to show me some of his guitars. And there's a particular video that I commented on some time ago, but of course nobody saw it because I think I've been flagged or something. And that was the room that I sat in where my drums were, and you can see Cozy's kit in the background, where he's talking about guitars, and he had in the picture is a pink, I think it's a Jackson or Charvel, but a Jackson I think it is, and Tina Turner had etched Tina in it with an ice pick. He said Tina etched Tina in there with an ice pick, you know. And he showed me various guitars, and in the roof of this building, which used to belong back in the day to the Archbishop of Canterbury, we won't go there either because my opinion on those characters. But anyway, this I think it's a Tudor manor, something like that. But of course, in the roof there were the original bathrooms with these enormous bathtubs, and that's where all his guitars were. And he had these wooden crates full of straw with all different guitar parts and all these different necks for these Strats. I remember him telling me, he goes, I don't know why they keep sending me all these. I'm never going to use all these, am I? You know, what am I going to do with all these? But he showed me all this stuff, as real Dan Electro guitars and just everything that he'd collected over the years. And one of the funny things to do with his amps, or with his main amp, and I remember Clive telling me, was that he had this Marshall head, and he had a plug socket on the back, which is like what you plug into the wall. So basically, if you plugged the lead into the wall, you had a live plug in your hand that you could touch and electrocute yourself with, if that makes sense. So a 3-pin English plug on a cable with a 3-pin English plug on the other end. So Clive redid that for him. And apparently they had these custom amps made and they all blew up. So he still ended up, when he went away, using his original, at the time, his original Marshall head. So we did a bunch of different track ideas, and he was asking me about whether I played in a band, and I had a band at the time called Blind Rage. And while I was there, Steve Lukather was calling up, because he did a load of stuff with Steve, who of course is, again, another amazing character and guitarist. And you know, yes, that's Luke on the phone. And that was exciting as well, you know, to be sort of just be part of that at that particular time. And then we just did various other tracks. And there was one night where we went down to a pub, and I think it's the Robin. It's called the Robin in Wadhurst, not the Cock Robin. I think it's the Robin in Wadhurst. And Jeff said, let's go to the pub. And I said, oh, yeah, it'd be great. So it's me, Jeff, and Clive. And he goes, we can go in your van. So I was like, you really want to go in this crappy old van? Anyway, we went down to this pub in the van. And Jeff was, I haven't been in an old transit van in years. This is great, you know. And I thought, how cool is this, you know? How cool is this guy to just want to just do normal stuff? Because he's just a normal bloke, right? And then, of course, there was all the guitar workshop stuff, and he was telling me all about how he, you know, all the car work that he did, and the guy used to paint spray all his cars, and lots of stories. He had an amazing kitchen table that was about 30 foot long, that had been in this house for decades, with lots of names scratched into it, and, you know, from the past and so on. And that was interesting as well. And there were a lot of other little things that happened at the time, but you know, I mean, to be able to do that, and then we were working on some little ideas, and he was, this is great. We could send this to Pino Palladino could play on this. You know, anybody who doesn't know Pino, the fretless bass player, Paul Young, and we could send this to, you know, and it was nice because even with my lack of experience at the time, it was just like playing music with people that you'd known for years, and let's just do that. What do you think? You know, it was really cool. And there was one point where he started telling me about a tour they were going to do, or he was going to do, where we're playing at Madison Square Garden and all this kind of stuff. And I actually believed naively that at some point he might even suggest that perhaps I would be available to do it. But anyway, that aside, one of the points that I was saying is that about teamwork. If it hadn't been for Clive and so on, you know, I'd have never been able to do that. And it gave me a boost, and it gave me a push up the ladder, which meant that when I did eventually go to the States, I was able to use that as a little bit of leverage to get my artist visa and it. But I had a comment on a video that I put out years ago, and I'm only bringing this up not to sort of like point a finger at this guy, but this guy wrote, he goes, "How is it possible that someone like this, i.e. me, is able to play for somebody like Jeff Beck? With so many amazing drummers out there, how and why?" I could have responded with various comments, but of course I didn't bother. There's no point. But the point being is that the reason I was there was not because somebody was calling me up asking me to go. The reason I was there was because I made it my mission that I had to go and play some drums for Jeff, and one way or another I was going to do it. And there was a very interesting interview with Kit Winger, another guy that I really like, where he was talking about how he got involved with Alan Parsons and a letter that he wrote to Alan when he was a lot younger. And it was a similar type of thing. It took me a year to get to Jeff's. When I got to Jeff's, I was easy to get on with. I did what I was told or what I was asked to do. I didn't overplay. I wasn't there for myself, right? And as I said, I was there. I was on time. I turned up. There are so many people out there that are brilliant at what they do, but they don't turn up on time. That's never going to get you anywhere. Or they're brilliant at what they do, they turn up, and then when they're there, they're so difficult to work with, they're never invited back again. And I see that more and more and more over the years, you know, especially with guitars and drums. It's become a sport. You know, people actually criticise Kenny Aronoff, go, "Don't know how this guy's ever got to where he is." It's like, really? What are you doing? Nothing. Well, there you go. You know, but it is all about teamwork, and it is about getting the right people together who inspire each other and have a good time as well. As I said, it takes more than one person to run a restaurant or build a house. You can do it, but it's hard work. So years later, I went back to Jeff's to deliver a package from Herman Rarebell from the Scorpions. I'd got friendly with Herman, been to the Frankfurt Music Mess, and Herman said, "Hey, you know Jeff, would you take this package out to him?" And I was like, "Oh no, really?" What he wanted to do, Herman wanted to do some of the original Scorpions songs, but with different people playing on it. I think Joe was going to do it, Joe Lynn and Kip, but I don't know. I don't think it ever happened. But of course I have to take this, right? Because if I don't take it, people would say, well, perhaps you didn't go in the first place. But as you've seen, I've put some pictures in of my drums at Jeff's. Anyone who's been to Jeff's will know that room. And I was like, yeah, all right then, okay. Now, I had already been to the States. I'd already spent time in the States, lived there, moved back to Europe, where I'm based now, in southwest France. So anyway, I go and I thought, how am I going to get in? Because I knew the gates, there were gates, and I could jump over the sort of river stream. But fortunately, I remembered the number on the lock, on the gate lock. But when I got there, it was open. I couldn't believe it. So I drove up the drive. I think I drove up the drive, or I parked up and walked up. And there was Jeff underneath a car with the car lift. And it was just like the Guitar Workshop picture. And he turned around and he goes, "Can I help you?" And I was like, and he suddenly recognised it. I was like, oh, wow, you know, haven't seen you in years. Anyway, I told him why I'd come and everything. And we exchanged a bit of conversation. I left the package, and that was it. And that was the last time. Well, that was the last time I saw him, apart from when I went to see him play at the O2 a few years back with Eric Clapton. A double bill. But anyway, that's kind of like my story. A shortened version of it, really. There was a lot in it, but for me it was the greatest experience ever, because I'm a huge guitar fan. And when Jeff played, and we did play together, we played along together, it was almost like there was a whole band there. just the way he played, and it was a great experience for me. A lot of people have worked with Jeff, and I'm sure they'll all say the same thing. And he was a really nice guy as well, and very, very funny. So there's my story. There's my Jeff Beck story. Sadly gone, but there you go. Something that we're all going to face, or we all face at some point. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about Joe Lynn Turner, Rainbow, Deep Purple, Yngwie Malmsteen, and I'm going to do that for another little video. Great guy, again, super nice bloke. We certainly have a connection, and he really has laid it out over the last year or so as to what is going on in this realm of ours. I'm glad that he is like that, because he's one of the only ones that is, in my opinion. So thanks for listening, and hope you got a little information out of this. But it was all down to teamwork and making something happen. If you want something to happen, you got to take the bull by the horns and make something happen. That's it from me. Thanks again for listening, and I will be uploading some more soon.